Hello, good to see you. Thanks for joining me. Well, we start a new travel tale today and sorting through my memoirs and journals for things to amuse you with, especially while we're on lockdown. And this one is from some time ago, years back, when I'd never ever set foot on a canal boat before. It's called Narrowboat Thrills on the Shroppie. So, are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin. Why did we think a canal boat break would be restful and relaxing? Why did we assume it would all be plain sailing? In the first 24 hours of hiring a 30-foot narrowboat on the Shropshire Union canal in England, we have come close to collision, disaster and divorce in roughly that order. The sun was out at Norbury Junction on Saturday afternoon as we arrived after a 2-hour drive down the M6 from Burnley. Ducks were floating contentedly. People were sitting outside the Anglo-Welsh boat hire reception, sipping drinks and watching the canal boats. There in the sunlight was our boat, Heron, moored up and putt-putting innocently. We loaded our carrier bags of food and clothes on board. It was a sturdy little craft with a well-made wooden interior. There was a kitchen, very well equipped with all manner of glass and china crockery, which looked eminently breakable. The little bathroom had a small pump-out toilet, which I had very little intention of pumping out, and a tiny shower with an alarming instruction about "don't let it dry out!" Exclamation mark. A very personable young man with cropped hair, earring and multicoloured tattoos arrived with a clipboard to give us tuition. This was not extensive, as he told us it was his first week and he was still getting to know the boats. Paul told him, rather rashly, that we were not novices, though we are really, having once steered a wide canal boat with some on a community outing 15 years ago, and having friends who live on a narrowboat. Hardly qualifications to inspire confidence in retrospect. He referred darkly to a mystical checking of the weed hatch and pointed to something underneath a cover. So if the propeller gets lagged up with weeds or any kind of debris, obviously the boat slows down to nothing. He demonstrated turning down the stern tube greaser and gave us a ring binder file which gave details on the daily checks we needed to do. If I mention the water pump, engine expansion tank, bilges, control panel and boiler, they were all referred to, you may wonder how relaxing this break would be. A full page was devoted to starting the engine alone. Our pleasant young instructor came with us for a few hundred yards to see us off, and all the people sitting at the tables appeared to regard us as a mild form of entertainment as we stumbled about with ropes. Paul took the tiller, and as we pulled slowly away from the quay, there was an immediate sharp curve to the right under a very narrow bridge. Canals are quite narrow to start with, often only the width of 2 of these narrow boats. He managed this well, and it seemed we'd be okay. But a slight doubt crept in as the young man asked to be dropped off at a narrowboat further down, and he had to leap for his life onto the boat from our boat and use all his strength to stop us from ramming the boat at the side. This was at some personal risk to his Doc Martin booted legs. As he waved us off with a mixture of relief and amusement, we steadied ourselves. Why would this boat not travel in a straight line? The whole business of steering a narrowboat requires you to forget that you've ever been behind the wheel of a car. You must think ahead and allow a lot of time for the boat to slowly respond. By the time it starts responding to your change of tiller direction, you desperately need it to change back to the original direction, but it's too late. And if you want the boat to go to the right, then you pull the tiller to the left and vice versa. So quite counterintuitive. Well, we were too late, and as we came through the narrow stone arch, the width of one boat, with inches to spare, our boat began to veer towards the right bank, the opposite side of the towpath. This bank was covered in many large trees, with plentiful branches and foliage, and we were heading straight for them. There was a sickening crunch and cracking of twigs and branches as the boat ploughed on at a crazy angle, finally coming to rest as it hit the bank at speed and ran aground. We were covered in leaves and twigs, and strong branches had been bent until they were quite liable to suddenly come free and decapitate us. We battled with them, and Paul took the long wooden pole which was resting along the roof of the boat and pushed against the bank with all of his might. I, meanwhile, crouching in a hobbit-like and inhuman position on the deck to avoid being knocked out by the flailing branches, reached up to the tiller and revved and rived the boat like a thing possessed. During this nightmare, which seemed to last for hours, but was probably about 10 minutes, Paul was yelling instructions at me as if I was an idiot and becoming white-faced with panic and effort. Just as we suspected we would have to ring Anglo-Welsh, and they were, some half a mile away, to come and rescue us, to the undoubted amusement of those people at the tables, we managed to break loose. The iron bottom of the boat ground against the rocky canal bed. And as I continued our revving the engine and pole pushing, the branches whacked against the boat and thrashed across our heads. The roaring engine churned up the water, and I remembered with irony how we had smilingly assured the young man we were well aware of the canal rule to avoid making a wash. We picked leaves and earwigs off each other. We chugged along the middle of the canal, looking and feeling as if we had been attacked in the jungle by marauding animals. We were quite emotional and physical wrecks, and the boat was covered in leaves, snapped twigs and broken branches. I let out a hollow laugh as we passed a moored narrowboat with the name Tranquility painted prettily on the side. You must be joking, I thought. Soon we came to another bridge to get through. This one was called Bridge 39, and it had like a double entrance. There was an entrance on top as well as the one we went through. And no sooner had we regained our composure than we remembered that this double bridge, with the smallest telegraph pole ever sticking out of it, was said to be haunted by Monkey Man. And Monkey Man was a black monkey-like figure, said to be the ghost of a drowned boatman. The air was damp and chill inside the bridge as we chugged underneath, our eyes darting this way and that. But once out of the canal, the air was light and spring-like again, and the canal regained its blossom-edged beauty. We chugged along until we reached the Anchor Inn, and I for one could not wait to get in there and have a drink, but we would have to moor up before we could do that. Fortunately, there was a long stretch of towpath with no boats moored, or I would not have given much for our chances. Our friends told us the boat would not easily stop, and we were aware that it takes 7 or 8 boat lengths to slow right down, and you have to put it into reverse. As car drivers, we did find it unnerving to try to stop without brakes. Much shouting and tumbling about, and we were just about at a standstill. I leapt onto the towpath and held the ropes. There were no mooring rings to tie the ropes to, so we had to get the lump hammer and mooring spikes, which were stowed at the bottom of the boat. While we were doing this, the boat wanted to go away from there and continue its journey, as it was quite windy, and we hammered in the spikes, only to find them being pulled out again by the boat's ropes as it tried to go on its way. A man moored near to us came and helped, hammering in the spikes while chomping on a cigar and keeping up a stream of helpful advice, while Paul tried to dissuade a large dog from investigating his nether regions. We could see the man's wife calmly pouring out 2 glasses of wine on their trouble-free and peaceful craft. The man showed me how to tie the ropes. "Always tie the rope at the boat, not at the towpath," he said, tying a knot so complex that it looked like a plate of spaghetti. "There, that's going nowhere," he said, and looking at that knot, I doubted it ever would again. We dismantled the furniture to construct a double bed and crawled in, falling asleep to the sound of our friends the trees swishing with laughter to each other, too tired to even go to the pub. Sunday morning, a dull grey sky, and we cast off with trepidation. I'm quite nervous about sailing Heron up to Market Drayton and back over the next 3 days. In fact, the better word is frightened. It was the stress and anxiety of being responsible for this lethal hunk of steel and wood with no brakes that rendered us ready for bed at 9 o'clock last night. However, courage, mon brave. I untie the half-hitched nautical granny knot and push the front of the boat away from the towpath. 1 foot on the boat, the other on the towpath, gradually doing the splits as Paul gently accelerates the engine. I spring like a young gazelle onto the moving boat, vault over the bull bars and onto the deck, running the rope through my hands and coiling it into neat loops like a professional matelot at the bow. Unfortunately, I am not a young gazelle, nor a matelot, but an overweight, middle-aged folk singer, and my sinews and joints may well suffer later. An hour of intense eyeball straining, concentrated steering later, and we decide to moor up for a cup of tea. There have been several very narrow bridges, followed by overhanging trees, and quite a few boats have slid warily past us as we chug as slowly as possible to their right. All the people on the boats wave and speak cheerily, but the same cannot be said of the fishermen. A more miserable and surly bunch you could not wish to meet, as they resentfully and at the last minute raise their fishing rods to let us pass. The rods are as thick as a man's arm and as long as the width of the canal. The men sit morosely with Tupperware containers of brightly dyed red and yellow maggots wriggling endlessly towards their fate. I can only imagine somewhere the fishermen's wives are letting their hair down and celebrating that they've got rid of these sour-faced men for a few hours. Looking forward to a reviving brew, we make for an uninhabited stretch of the canal. Paul turns the engine down a few revs and we glide towards the bank. I leap off with the rope at the front, but the back is too far out. I run to the back and pull the back rope in. As the back comes in, the front goes out, and this carries slowly on. A long narrowboat chugged past, overtaking us. "Thanks very much for letting us pass," said the grateful man at the helm. Without bothering to explain, we waved and smiled. He called out, "You need a middle rope, not just one at either end." This advice now seemed a little belated because we'd already given up trying to stop, and we continued on behind him. "Slow down, there's a boat coming through that bridge ahead," I told Paul. For these canal bridges are only wide enough for one boat to pass through. "It's okay," he said. "They're beckoning us to come through." End of episode 1. Episode 2 is tomorrow at 4 o'clock in the afternoon UK time. So, yeah, do join me to find out what happens next. And I'm sure you'll enjoy listening to it. Okay then, thanks for being with me. Bless you. Bye.